Hey, what is going on, everybody out there? I am the old guy jamming, but today I rolled some tubes into my Marshall. So I didn't jam a whole lot. I got to put my room back together now. But I did take some video of the circuit board and the chassis. I thought some of you Marshall geeks might want to check it out. And the interesting thing about it is that the parts, all the boards in there, stand for DSL 100 M2, and when you're in there, you can see um, all the sockets. The preamp sockets are all filled, but in the power stage, there's two open. I think it's V5 and V8. V6 and 7 are taken up, and but the other two on the outside are open for the DSL 100, whereas this is the DSL 40. All right, so that's kind of interesting. Lots of integrated circuits in there, lots of transistors. But anyway, I pulled this video out separate, and I thought you might like to look around on the Marshall circuit board. There is biasing jacks, easy to get to from the back side as well, which I didn't know about earlier. So I would like to check the bias. It'll be a voltage bias. So if anybody knows what that should be, let me know. I'd appreciate it. All right, enjoy the video. All right, so I have the chassis out, and we'll go through a little bit of this. If you're interested, this will give you a good look at what's inside this amp. This is all input power, standby and power switch, transformer leads in. There's a lot of fast blow fuses in here. There's one there, and there's one over here, one there, and one over here. So that's 4 fast blow fuses, which is good, I guess. It's good to be protected, but why do we need so many little fuses in there? It's common to see 1 additional fuse, but 4 is a little unusual. Every time you power this thing up, you hear a bunch of clicks, and that's from these little solid state relays. There's one here, and then there's a couple more over here and here. But that's all the power section. Pretty standard capacitors. Everything looks good. A lot of little harnesses here. This is this board right here, back in here, is I think MIDI and effects loop. It's all the MIDI and effects loop stuff, which I think also, if we look at this board, there's a lot of integrated circuits in here. This board right here is covered with ASICs, or application specific ICs. That's a brain, a couple brains, programmable stuff, so I'm sure that's a lot of MIDI circuitry. Another interesting thing is that the boards in here are all stamped with Marshall DSL 100 M2, which is kind of interesting. There's a lot of parts in here, so it's a board. They're using this board for the at least the 50 and the 100. Down here you can see where it's marked DSL 100 M2. Over here on the input, this is where we plug in. We've got another one that's labeled DSL 100 M2 right there. I wish my camera was better. Boy, I apologize. I just don't know what else to do about it. I don't know if it's because I'm shaking or if just the camera sucks. Probably the camera. Anyway, what I'm concerned with in here is making sure that I figure out which of the tubes are for the stage 1 and the tubes that are for the stage 2, and then that 4th tube if it's involved in the gain or if it's something else. And I think it's something else, because here's our first tube right here. This is our classic gain channel over here, And then this is our ultra gain channel over here. Our EQ is right over in here. And then we have reverb, and our master volumes are down over here. This is resonance and presence. Anyway, EQ stuff, but our first tube is right here, and it's got a coupling capacitor and resistor in there. And then our second tube is right here, and I think these are AC coupling capacitors. These is a RC network with a nice value resistor, probably a 1 or 2 watt resistor, and some coupling capacitors. This is our second tube right here. And again, we see this resistor and a capacitor, so I think we have our RC network there. Then this is valve number 3, and again with a resistor and a capacitor. So I believe we have stage 1 and 2, and then this is probably the ultra gain tube right here. I think these are part of the same. This one might even be shared between the 2 channels, but I'm going to go ahead with the JJ in slot 1 and slot 2, and then I'm going to put the electro harmonics over here in slot 3. Lots of integrated circuits in here. Lots of them. Little transistors back in here. There's a lot of digital in here, surprisingly enough. This is the 4th tube, and I don't see necessarily, it looks quite a bit different in its setup with the capacitors that are hooked to it. It just looks very different. So I'm assuming this one is either a phase inverter or has something to do with the effects loop. So I'm not going to do anything with that. We'll leave that as is and just focus on these. We have this resistor here, probably a signal coupling capacitor. Same one's here and the same one is here. In all 3 of those tubes we have the same resistor in the same place. So that's our signal path. I don't think there's anything else in here that's too interesting. Another relay, this separate little board for the input. That's kind of different, kind of weird. There's a lot of little separate boards. These are all the output jacks here for your speaker selections. These are the leads from the output transformer coming back into the board. I'd hate to have to try and fix it if it broke. And then our power valves are, one is here and one is right there, and with the sockets soldered to the board, and then the sockets are also fixed to the chassis, which is nice. Alright, I think I've covered about everything anybody would want to look at. Not like the Ignitor, and certainly not like your older amps. It makes me wonder about, maybe trying to find an old JCM 800 or some sort of vintage Marshall. Not vintage, but even a 1980s Marshall, I'm sure would be a lot different than this. And it makes me wonder if someday they just put tubes. Will we ever get to the point where they put tubes in just so that they can say it's a tube amp, and really the tubes are there just to glow and look pretty, and most of what's going on is actually digital circuitry? You think we're headed there? I don't know. Anyway, we'll flip this dude over and I'll set the valves.